Doing what God has called you to do. Don't ever feel like you can't just because there's resistance or there's not an understanding. But if He's calling you, you need to follow His call. I came to know Christ when I was a sophomore in college, and Cru started on our campus about that time. And by the time I graduated, I knew that the Lord was calling me on staff with Campus Crusade. And so when I was communicating with my parents along this journey, my mother was very upset that I would even consider doing this kind of thing. It was the age of cults, and she was scared to death I was involved in a cult. She didn't understand missions. She was so upset that she thought the way she could stop me was to cut me off financially in my last semester. And so that didn't stop me because the Lord had called me. So I joined the staff of Cru, which has been 46 years now. There were times when it was a struggle because I wanted my parents to be affirming of what I did. But over the years, my mom and I just pretty much didn't talk a lot about what I do or anything else. But my mom, when she was 90 years old, fell and broke her hip, and she was in rehab. And while she was in rehab, the Lord visited her in a dream and spoke to her about His love for her and His care for her. So when I showed up about a week later to help with her coming home from rehab, she couldn't hardly wait to tell me what had happened. And she just had never known love like she was experiencing now. And all she could say is, I just didn't understand, I just didn't understand. My mom went from being a very fearful, anxious woman to a very peaceful faith woman in just that short a time. And so for 5 months, we had very sweet fellowship. And she said to me, Sherry, I'm so glad you decided to follow God's call instead of what I wanted you to do. Well, my first thought was, Mom, are you speaking in tongues? Follow God's call is not a part of your language. And then I realized she just gave me her blessing. And I started crying, and I said, Mom, I've waited 43 years to hear you say that. And she said, Sherry, I just didn't understand what you were doing and why you were doing it, but now I do. And she kept saying, all I want to do is go to sleep and wake up in heaven. And so that night, she wanted to go to bed at 4 o'clock in the evening. And I thought, why do you want to go to bed so early? She said, I just want to go to bed. So I put her in bed. The next morning, she woke up angry. And my dad said, what's wrong? And we realized that she thought if she went to bed, the sooner she got to bed, the sooner she'd get to sleep, the sooner she'd wake up in heaven. That's what she really thought was going to happen. But about 4 days later, the Lord took her in a very precious way. She did get to fall asleep and wake up in heaven. And so it was so wonderful to know how the Lord in His faithfulness brought my mom to Himself in a way that I never would have known or expected Him to do. She really, truly found Jesus before she died. And often I thought if Mom had come to Christ earlier, she would have shared with so many people because that's just was her nature. And the Lord said to me, Sherry, I'm giving you the privilege of sharing your story. And it's just been so sweet to have that realization that He's made me like my mom now, talking to everyone, but for the purpose that I can tell, especially older people, I can tell them, never give up. Never give up. You never know. Those loved ones you've prayed for, you've labored with, you've expected to come to Jesus, you never know when they're going to do it, but you can believe the Lord knows when He's going to bring them to Himself.